I'll email this to you.
I'll put it up.
I'll email this.
Yeah, here's George.
Here it is.
Hey, guess your name tag, George. Name tags. How are you?
Should I not have lights on?
The 99? Yeah. What's the max? What is it? Oh, this ice. It has a drum track.
Yeah.
You know this record, AJ? This will tell you everything you want to know about it.
I don't own records.
Well, I know, this is amazing. Where the hell did you do this? I know, I thought what happened to you. I just had the other way.
I rebuilt it pretty much what he says.
Well, I got mine on Amazon. Yeah, I got others, but I just got a little longer one for.
You can do a PowerPoint?
Yeah. There will be a quiz now.
I realize this thing rotated.
Yeah.
Jump the cost of each.
Oops.
It definitely sounds good. So, that's right. All right, heads up, everybody.
Oh, listen to this.
You need a microphone. You can talk from the start. What are you going to buy next? What are you going to buy next?
Yeah. Jewelry, I think.
I bet you have to.
Yeah. First of all, I should thank Ellen. First of all, thank you all for coming, and thank my lovely wife for putting up with me all these years.
Two thumbs up on the meatballs.
Yeah, that too. So I thought I'd do a little summary presentation of the evolution. I thought I'd do a little summary presentation on the evolution of this system, hit the high points. Feel free to interrupt at any point. We'll have continued discussion as we go, but I'll just move along here and talk about where I've been and where I'm going, perhaps. Although my wife is always telling me where to go. But so my gateway drug, like most of you guys, probably was in college. This isn't the exact system, but I had something like this, a sound design compact system in my dorm that I bought at JM Fields in 1973.
I bet it sounded fantastic.
And that turntable is actually better than this one, I might add. So I've gone backwards. But this is how it started. I did have a cassette player, which was wonderful. I used to play my records in the dorm wet, because it sounded fantastic once. And thereafter, I ruined them. So 15 years, over the next 15 years, I went through a variety, like we all did, of gear, eventually going from bookshelf speakers to the Polk Towers, and then moving up in 1989 to ADCOM separates on my first real high-end system, which were the Apogee acoustic stages. And having heard those, about a sound device, once I heard those, I was hooked. It was phenomenal. The depth of the sound stage, the transparency, and they actually had phenomenal bass.
Did you have sparks?
Pardon me?
Did you have sparks?
Sparks?
Sparks, yes, on the panels.
No, I did not. But we can maybe have some today. So basically, I had that for a number of years. But unfortunately, when we built the house and all, we didn't really have any room for them, and I sadly got rid of them. And I ended up getting Martin Logan Arias eyes, which were somewhat similar with a dipole design, sound, deep sound stage, obviously not the same scale. Had that for a number of years. In 2000, trying to get better bass, better imaging. I then went from ADCOM separates up to the Sunfire Cinema Grand. And I added the NHT Sub 2 that I used primarily for home theater, but I played with it a little bit at the time.
Passive? Or did
passive, totally passive. And I actually had it bi-amped because the Sunfire Cinema Grand was a 5-channel amp. So you could, if you recall, Bob Carver had you have a choice of either what he called the current or the voltage taps. It was just one had a resistor, one didn't. So you could change the quality of the sound. So I had the voltage went to the panels and then the current to the sub portion, the woofer portion. But then in 2007, I got these Summits. So they're pretty old. The panels were already 9 years old. And as George can attest, I think 10 to 12 years at that point you might need to replace them. Because this is an open floor plan next to the kitchen, I probably have a good deposit of oil and stuff on these. You can wash them, but it's quite a ritual. And then I upgraded to the mod right. Yeah. Then I upgraded to the mod right preamp when I got into tube rolling and the Bellis reference 358 solid state amp, and those were phenomenal until shortly after getting them I blew out the amp because it passed the DC current. But David Bellis was very kind, and Dan Wright for Mod Right, they replaced them, and that wasn't a problem.
The preamp passed DC to the amp,
Right.
Okay, I was going to say, Bellis knows what he's doing.
Yeah. It didn't have a Muse circuit on the preamp.
He's learning.
Yeah. And then the big problem was I had the wall unit, which my wife can attest to. We had gotten specifically for the room, but I wasn't happy. It had big glass doors. I tweaked it a little bit because my soundstage wasn't deep. I took the glass off the doors, played around with that, and decided, that huge wall unit was a problem. And after many years, we'll get there in a moment. Actually, let me back up for a second here. So I got the Summits, and Craig, who's not that active with the club anymore, and George both had Summits or some iteration thereof. And they had phenomenal deep bass that I never got. When I first got the Summits, I just didn't have that deep, tight bass. I assumed it was the room. So for 3 years, I tweaked the room. And then I get the XTZ Room Analyzer, and I go, let me just measure these. And this is what I get. I measured each one individually near field. This is a full range measurement, and clearly there's a problem. This is the green is the left Summit, and the blue is the right. What the hell's going on here? Okay? So I send this trace to Martin Logan, Jim Powers, who's one of their, and he says, one of your woofers is out of phase.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like.
And I said, how could that be? And I bought them used. It turns out whoever I bought them from had taken them apart and put them back together wrong. It turns out I had to get to the power board, and basically the little connectors, as you can see there, had gotten switched. He somehow switched a couple of those. And lo and behold, 3 years after getting the Summits, I fixed it like, whoa, completely different speaker. Felt like an idiot. I thought it was all the room. A lot of it was the room, but not all the room. And the XTZ Room Analyzer has unfortunately sent me down a path of no return, for better or for worse, mainly for worse. So I also tried, once I got that basic bass issue resolved, I still had to deal with the room. I tried a variety of other things, as we all have, trying to improve soundstage and imaging. Silk plances, diffusers. I built the acoustic bookshelves. We got rid of that other wall unit. I built this to act as a bit of a diffuser and absorber. These panels at the bottom are little mini bass traps. They don't do much, but they don't hurt anyways. So there's the acoustic bookshelves. I replaced the granite coffee table that I used to have, as you can see in that picture, with much ado with the more absorptive. I was thinking of cutting the middle of that out and adding some padding to make that a bass trap too. Perhaps. Yeah, there you go. So it definitely has improved the mid-range and the imaging, all those iterations. But still, I had the bass issues where I still wasn't able to replicate what George and Craig and others have been able to do. It turns out in measuring the room here, because I got one of these fancy laser measuring devices, it turns out that the whole kitchen and family room is roughly 17 feet by 34 feet, which was not at all a good multiple for bass and for resonance and so forth. So I don't think I convinced my wife to knock out a wall, so I'm kind of stuck with the room. I've got over 6,400 cubic feet with the ceilings, plus the open passageways, hallways, opening to the living room, so it's very challenging to energize the room with bass.
Where's Edward?
Yeah. Same thing. The glass, everything.
All the blocks of basement right out the door.
Yes. So basically, I did try to add some bass traps. I have that pillar trap for sale, by the way. I had that in the corner, as you recall. It helps. I don't think it adds that much to my room, but if somebody wants a good deal for that, they can use this. A wonderful pedestal also for art. They don't make those anymore. And actually, the side table there is also a mini bass trap. It was called their table trap. I also, it was GIK Acoustics.
Oh, GIK,
yes, yes.
By definition, 2 times 1 is not a good multiple. That's just sort of
Correct.
known in the
Apparently so. Yes, yes. In reading the XTZ literature and some others, a perfectly square room or a multiple, rectangular multiple is not good. I mean, it is what it is.
That's in a perfectly rigid room.
Right, square.
With no holes. No holes,
Right.
no glass. If it's just a concrete room, sure.
Right,
but
right.
It isn't.
It isn't. No, so that's not the only issue. The bigger issue is the number of cubic feet that I have. That's the challenge. Okay. So moving on, I had the NHT sub, and I was also considering what else. I can go with DSP type solutions using mini DSP as John Chait. Where's John? He's supposed to be here. John Chait did the mini DSP for his system. Sounds phenomenal. Dirac, Accurate are all similar type devices. DQX is what Niall Mello recommended when I hosted this 2 years ago. Or go with multiple subs, which obviously is a route I took. So in 2014, I said, okay, let's try multiple subs. And for those of you, how many of you were here when I hosted that meeting? It was about 2 years ago. I had the NHT sub, I had the one Martin Logan sub here on the side, NHT over there. I had used the XTZ Room Analyzer to get a pretty good flat response, okay? Played it, and it sounded like shit. It measured great, it sounded lousy, okay? So here's what happened is that you'll see I have this huge null in the bottom 2 traces, and they're basically the same, basically 2 traces. But I've got that giant null at 50 to 60 hertz, which the room has. It's just the nature of the room. Adding the 2 subs, I was able to fill it in and get a smoother response, but they weren't really in phase. The timing was different. They were totally different designs. They did not play well together. I subsequently had Eric Hochberg out. I had a mini meet about 6 months later, and he came out with his measurement device for speakers and so forth, and measured the phase, the timing and such in the room, and showed us what could be done by dialing everything in. We turned off the NHT and then dialed in the single BalancedForce sub to better match the summits. But at that point, I hadn't played much with the summit controls either. But it looked like we were on the right track. Okay, so then I moved on to now, okay, after playing around with all the room treatments I could, I said, well, let's go with the full multiple sub approach, at least 2, ideally the same subs. And in fact, a couple months ago, I got the second sub. And the question was what to do with it. Ideally, what you want to do is the crawl test. In fact, the trick, which I haven't done yet, but I will at some point, is to put one sub in the sweet spot, then crawl around the room and listen for where the cleanest bass is, okay? Because you then would reverse, the sub would go where you have the tightest bass when you're crawling around. You can actually use the XTZ or any room analyzer to measure the bass all around the room, and you get a more objective measurement of where the best spot is. I have not done that. My wife is very happy with where the subs are located now. So for the time being, that's where they're at. When I have some time, I'm going to do the crawl or the measurement and see where else they could go for optimizing them.
Until he puts them back where they now belong.
Yes. See who must be obeyed. So it's a dual mono setup. Originally, I was going to do a left-right setup, but after talking to some people and reading online, it would be easier to do the dual mono because I've got the one sub over there on the far side is slaved off the one locally, and I've got one set of cables running underneath the rug just to the one sub, and then a single umbilical connecting the 2. It also makes it easier to adjust the subs because all the controls work for both. So I tweaked the location. Pardon me?
Is that coming off your speaker?
It's coming off the preamp.
Oh, your second.
I've got a second set of outs from the preamp running in, so it's line level, not speaker level. And then I used XTZ to dial in phase and measuring. Okay? And I posted this online. What this is, the blue line is with the subs, the green is without the subs. And again, you see I had that big dip at 50, 60 hertz, thereabouts. So by running both subs, I totally smooth that out and eliminate that. Okay, it's not perfect by any means. And by the way, this is, and it turns out this is the anechoic measurement, so it's not the raw. When I measure raw, there's still a dip at 50, but it's much more narrow and probably not as audible, if at all. But we'll measure, and I'm going to demo this today.
Where's the microphone when you're measuring?
It was more or less, I've got it back, but it's in the sweet spot.
Okay.
And the journey continues. So what are the next steps for me? Experimenting further with sublocation, probably when my wife is away, so I'll never know.
The crossover on how low you're running versus...
Yeah, we'll talk about that, yeah. Another thing I might still play with is DSP, possibly mini DSP, or John Shade highly recommended the Accurate product. He said that it's simpler and just as good. I might consider that. I might possibly, some point, honey, cover your ears, upgrade to the Martin Logan new Renaissance series, which is a 15-inch panel, 6-foot tall speaker with two 12-inch woofers and a whole new design that includes built-in DSP, anthem room correction, plus a passive crossover. Yeah. Very expensive speakers, only $24.90 to start. However, there's an additional cost that comes with that. Okay, so I have to, so I need to be careful and weigh the pros and the cons.
That means only 50% of that cost then.
Right, right.
Piece or a pair?
Pardon me, that's a pair, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's a bargain.
So,
a lot less than a divorce.
yes, so that's what we have thus far. For those of you that haven't heard my system, I'll go through very briefly what I'm using as source, which is primarily computer, Squeezebox Touch that I've had for many years, with the enhanced digital output upgrade that allows it to stream high-res 24/192. It can even be configured to play DSD. I haven't done that. I've got a Bell Canto 3.5 Mark II DAC that could be upgraded now to their new 3.7 version. I'll probably do that. Conrad Johnson CT5 hybrid preamp. It has two 6N30P super tubes, and then solid state, lots of Teflon caps. The Conrad Johnson Premier 350 amp is one of their rare pure solid state amps. A lot of Teflon caps in there as well. 350 watts into 8 ohms, 700 into 4, and it goes even higher into 2. And AJ just measured before we started today the impedance of the speakers. AJ, where are you?
Here.
Oh. So, did you email me the?
No.
Oh, not yet. You can just tell them what you measure, but.
Yeah, no, it's about 5 ohms in the mid bass. It humps up where the resonance of the panel is, and then it drops to about 1 3/4 of an ohm at 20K. But luckily, there's not that much energy there with most program materials. So I was telling pretty much any decent amplifier that's capable of driving a 4 ohm load would handle that no problem. So,
yeah. So, and I've got.
That's fairly typical for these type of panels, by the way.
Yeah.
They can do it.
Oh, and then some.
Yeah. And the Summits have a built-in Bang & Olufsen Class D amps for each woofer, 200 watts per woofer built in. I've got streaming from a network-attached storage in the master bedroom network hub. My files are ripped to FLAC for the most part, some WAV files. I don't use MP3. So the Squeezebox Touch pulls the music as the server delivers it to the DAC and so forth. The Oppo player for physical media. I've got a Running Springs Duke power conditioner for the amp and the preamp. And yes, I have listened with and without it. No difference. It's not a current limiting power conditioner. And I've got a cheaper Belden or Belkin, whatever it is, surge protector for the low voltage stuff, the source and such. And the latest coup d'etat, or the creme de la creme of my system, is this extremely high-end turntable, which I will be auctioning off tonight. No, I backed it on Kickstarter. It's more of a conversation piece. We'll spin some vinyl.
I was just going to say.
Next month, Bart is actually going to be having a format shootout of vinyl versus ripped vinyl versus CD. That'll be fascinating, and there'll be a preview of coming attractions. This is by no means a high-end turntable, but at some point we'll get another one in here. So any questions about my system? What I wanted to do, I've got this rigged up to do some demonstration measurements of the system live. Okay, it's not going to be perfect, but we'll get a feel for how it measures. We can dial the bass up if you want to see what happens when I crank it up. I already know where the settings are. I can always go back to where I was. So we'll have some fun with it. So you had a question, Philip.
What type of server are you using? Is Synology yet?
No, it's just a Netgear ReadyNAS NV Plus, an old one.
Okay.
Yeah, it still runs fine. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And the internet wiring or the
Cat 5.
Is Cat 5.
Cat 5. Yeah, when I built the house, I actually put in structural wiring Cat 5 to all the rooms.
Okay, so it's in the walls.
It's in the walls. I'm not doing wireless or anything for that. I've got wireless for other, but yeah, I'm happy with it. In my opinion, the SqueezeBox Touch still has no competition. Of course, it's been out of production for 2 years now, but I'm very happy with it. At some point, I'll have to upgrade to something else, but it works for me. Other questions thus far? Okay, we'll take a little break here, and then actually, if you want to pause that, Gary, and then I'll get the XTZ set up, and we'll do some measurements. I'll do some demos.
Crossover on the sub?
It turns out it's interesting. I downloaded the filters. The beauty of the Martin Logan subs is that you download from their website the filters that correspond to the sub. It doesn't tell you what the crossover is, but they have different settings. So for instance, with my Martin Logan Summits, I had 3 choices for how I can leave the woofers configured, and just the mains themselves. I could leave them at 0 and 0. They have a 25 and a 50 hertz control, that's plus or minus 10. So the 3 options were leaving it at 0 and 0, okay, and then downloading the matching filter for the Martin Logan subs that match that. It supposedly helps align the phase and determines what the upper crossover is. How well that works, I don't know. The other option is to have it as minus 10 and minus 10, which is how I have this configured, or minus 10 on the 25 and 0 on the 50. I haven't played with all the permutations of this yet. In time I will. But thus far I found that the minus 10 with the appropriate filters for the subs worked best in giving me the smoothest response. Okay, and it's interesting, we can play later and see what happens when I crank the woofers back up here. It seems to actually make it more irregular and interact, because you've got the room, you've got all the speakers interacting with one another and the room.
Well, when you go minus 10 on the 25 and the 50, you're essentially
cutting off the woofers.
Past
Right.
And so the bass is mainly coming from there.
Right.
Well, your microphone is there, so of course the response is
Well, my listening spot's there.
Exactly, but what you're going to measure is it has to be smoother there because it's near field to the
Right,
so.
right. And I haven't done, you can also do up to 3 measurements with this, or more actually, to get an average response, like across the whole couch or elsewhere in the room. But since I'm the primary one who listens, I wanted it to optimize it for the sweet spot.
So can you go between 0 and 10?
I can do whatever I want manually, but there's no downloadable filter for the sub that matches, at which point I have to just manually tweak it. John, you made it. Welcome.
Yes, I did.
You hearing this, John? You hear?
I'm here. I heard a little bit of it.
Okay, yeah. Here, you're going to be able to watch it on Gary's, yeah.
Controls on the back of the main amplifiers for these things, sub amplifiers. 25 and a 50 hertz. It sounds like a filter. You can go from 0 to minus 10 and just roll off the bass below 25 hertz, roll off the bass below 50 hertz. Or it might be a parametric EQ.
10 to minus 10.
10 to minus 10.
Yeah.
So it's like a parametric
Plus or
EQ,
minus.
basically.
Yeah.
So they have you cut the 25 and 50 hertz on the main things by 10. In other words, turn it down. And then he says that there's a corresponding filter on here which would obviously have this thing operate up to 50 hertz or more to blenders. But there's no way they could know where you're going to put it. So there's no. It's basically just a rough guess on the frequencies what they're doing. They're going to have this operate up to at least 50 or 60 hertz or so.
I think they should provide a software that you can tweak the file yourself.
To know
makes a
what
lot of
frequency.
sense.
Right.
Well, you can, using XTZ, you can figure it out. There's ways to just figure what the crossover is, and that gives me plenty of tweaking opportunities, which I'll play with for the next 10 years.
You could try going from 0 to maybe 5 on the 50. Leave the 25 at 0.
But we'll do all this. We'll measure, and you'll see we can play with it. So what I'll do, And I apologize. It turns out I've got like a ground loop. When I turn the volume back on, we're going to have a relatively high mid-range, interference. But it is what it is.
George does dedicated.
Now the only thing we'll have to do, I think, to be honest, unfortunately, Charles, let's vacate the center seat. Already done. Let me know when you're on.
Okay.
We've already done 2 measurements with XTZ. The top trace is relatively flat, is with the subs and the mains. The mains are dialed down minus 10 decibels at 25 and 50 hertz. The bottom trace is without the subs, just the main speakers, unchanged. Now we've dialed up the 25 hertz settings to 0, and we're going to measure once more. I'll make sure. You wanted, wait, what do you want? What do we want? We
50
want
hertz on 0.
Okay, and 25 on minus 10. We'll do one more check to make sure we're correct here. 25 is minus 10, 50 is 0. I haven't done this measurement. This should be interesting. And that's with the subs on? You want it?
No.
They're off. They're off. Okay, here we go. Okay, quiet in the house. Quiet in the house. That's the, okay, so that's even worse, I think. Here's, wait a minute, show to.
No, yellow versus what you got there, it's a lot flatter. You still have a bit of a dip.
Yeah.
However, that dip is at that microphone. It doesn't mean that you have a dip 2 feet forward or
Correct.
Here. Or, so you
Correct.
have to be
Average.
careful that, well, you have to realize that what you're seeing is at the tip of that pressure microphone.
Right.
It's not necessarily what you hear.
Correct.
So, like if you moved it, say 3 feet forward now, you're sitting there leaning forward a little bit, you might get a completely different, Edward, you want to do the honors, hold the microphone? Yeah.
You want to hear?
sit-
Yeah, I'll pull it out.
and then run it one more time.
What
Pardon me?
frequency is that at? I made a measurement with my cell phone, and it doesn't show that dip at all.
Exactly.
Because you're standing there.
Right.
And that's the thing about bass. That's the whole thing about bass. It's so specific. Even moving a subwoofer an inch or one way or the other can change it, shifting over on the couch. So you gotta, that's why they say to average it, because then you're really getting just an overall measure. Let's take this out.
Yeah, just have Edward hold it approximately, like
Here,
right
wherever.
there. Yeah. It'll be fine. For bass frequencies, makes no difference whatsoever. So a little bit backward, a little bit more toward it.
In the mouth.
More like
No, use it like a rectal thermometer. You're in.
in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, just
Don't pull that too hard. That's tape. Hold on, it's taped down. So.
That's fine, right there.
Okay, so we're gonna now, let me save this one. Okay, so we'll compare. Now we're gonna measure once more. Okay, quiet in the house.
That's about 3 feet forward from where it was.
No room nodes.
Look at that.
And which one is, that's the,
So your dip
that's this one, I think?
is almost gone. Yeah, now you're down to like a 3B,
Right.
which is just minimal.
Right.
And so you have to be careful to understand that each time you measure, you're measuring only at that point.
Right.
So
Next to the last one. I think it's purple. It's a purple one.
no, the green one is the last one.
Here.
That's the green one. That one right there, I think, is the last one. The green, correct?
No, the blue.
Sorry, blue. Yeah, is that blue? Or?
I think the blue. Wait a minute. Show 2. That's 2. That's 3. So this is the measurement.
Yes, exactly, that one. So your dip is pretty much almost gone.
Right. But then when you go out in the deeper bass, well, it's not too bad here. We're down only 5 decibels.
No, because you've got the 25 rolled off.
Right.
So really, what you have there is a little bit of a peak between, say, 60 and 125, and a small dip at 60 something hertz or so. So, I mean, you could possibly play around with running the subs a little bit lower with the setting that you would have with the 50 hertz at 0. You could also play with it in between 0 and 10. Or
Yeah, but then I'm going to be totally doing everything manually, which is fine.
Yeah, the idea with measurements is to understand what they tell you and use them as a guideline, and then the final arbiter is your ears.
Right.
So, understand the limitation of what the microphone can tell you,
Right.
and use that information, but then in the end, you still have to use your ears to see which one sounds better.
Right. Let me show you something interesting on how I use this to dial in the phase and get the phase right. So we'll put the microphone back, because this is something I hadn't done last time, which is what Eric basically did with his device, manually tweaking everything, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back, just for reference sake, I'm going to put it back to where I had it with minus 10, minus 10.
Shouldn't it be off the ceiling would be more...
Nope, it's directional. Well, it doesn't matter. This is directional for the mids and the highs. For bass, it probably doesn't matter, okay, but I kept it forward. Let's keep it forward because that's how I measured everything, though. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure, go back to the real time analysis, the full pink noise one. The subs aren't turned on yet. Actually, let me just mute this for a moment. It's probably going to pop because these have been powered off when I turn that on. Let me just turn these on manually. They may pop for a second. Let me turn the volume. Well, I can't.
You turn one on and it will turn on?
Actually, one thing I didn't do, however, is my volume up all the way here, and I didn't turn the TV volume down either. Hang on, that wasn't up all the way either here. So I haven't been getting the full volume. And I should turn the volume on the TV down because I'm playing it through here as well. I forgot to do that.
Probably puts out some serious bass.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to do is just play the full analysis here, and I'll explain here. Watch what happens is I manually adjust the phase. Hang on. See that going down, that bar going down? That's probably the crossover point.
Yes.
Okay? And as I tweak this,
Very accurate.
if I go farther, it goes back down. So I'd say it was 180. I could probably go with 90.
You're changing the phases in both.
Pardon me?
You're changing the phases both subwoofers.
Yes. Yes. Yes, they're slaved. They're slaved.
Yes.
Yeah, they're slaved. So that was interesting. I hadn't done that before. There's other ways you can measure, obviously. Now, John, you're the real expert with this sort of thing. So, out of curiosity, how many of you have used REW or OmniMic or something like this or some other program to try to objectively measure and tweak your system? Okay, so a few of us, quite a few of us have. And ultimately, it's listening. As I proved last time, even though it measured flat, when I measured, it sounded like crap because there's certain things you can't measure. So listening ultimately is the ultimate judge.
You can measure.
Well, you can measure, but
You can hear it, you can measure.
what other tricks? Well, I mean, with this XTZ, those of you using XTZ, okay, and by the way, there's some other tricks. If you're using XTZ, for those of you that do, you need to make sure a couple of things in the Windows settings, because it's a Windows product. Bear with me for a minute, just for teaching purposes. I'm gonna, oops. Open volume mixer. Let me see if this is the one. First of all, this needs to go up all the way. You might need to go in the volume mixer and crank the volume up so you can get the highest decibel measurement. That's one thing you need to do. You also need to make sure that it's set up properly in the Windows mixer for, let me see where it was, recording devices or microphone properties. I think it was in here. Advanced. You need to make sure, yes, In fact, this is set up wrong. See, you really want this to be set up for DVD quality, they said, is better, especially for the highs. So it's interesting that it wasn't set up that way.
Nah. The CD 44 will cut off your 22 kilohertz.
Yeah, so it's
48 will go to 24.
Yeah, probably not critical.
No.
Yeah. So let me go do one more measurement that I haven't done, which is the full range measurement. Oh, okay, shoot.
No, that's all right. No,
I'll do one more quick measurement here, which is the full range measurement, okay? Which is different. They'll also measure RT60, the reverb in the room. Okay, we'll do, again, quiet in the room. Let me crank this up to the maximum. Stop. Okay, now we're going to measure. This is just one quick sine wave measurement. And here we go. What? So
looks pretty.
There's the measurement, and then also the energy in the room. If I go back, one thing I also need to explain here. Let me flip. Okay, this is the 50 millisecond point here. Okay, and they say basically the reverb or the energy in the bass areas, you want it to be as low as possible, but definitely under 50 milliseconds. Okay, so this measures pretty well. I've got this one area here that pops up a little bit, but it's really the most energy is still below 50 milliseconds. So you don't have that much muddy bass, okay? Whereas in here now going back, so my RT, I didn't show the RT60. Let's see.
That into a waterfall?
Which one?
That graph.
The last one?
Into a waterfall.
The last one?
No, talking about the water. That's not.
Which, this one?
Yes.
That's a spectrogram.
I don't know.
It's just a different way of looking at the water.
Yeah.
Eric knows that program, right? Is there a waterfall?
Well, here's a waterfall. Here's the waterfall.
Could you go up there and point out what?
I can actually make this real big if you want. I think, yeah. I can do that.
And those things are not.
And it's not absolute.
No, and it's not
Yeah.
accurate. You can get high resolution in the frequency domain at the expense of time, and you can get high resolution in the time domain at the expense of frequency, but you can't get them both at the same time.
Now,
Again, you have to know what you're looking at.
Yeah. Now it's interesting when we put floors down. I didn't include that on my list of tweaks in the room, but we took out the carpet, put down the wood floors. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll follow up with you. Thanks, AJ.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're lost. I mean, he's gone.
Now you're gonna get somewhere.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I don't understand what I'm seeing on that graph. Could you go out there and point it out?
What this is basically is the full range frequency response. Okay, it's like the bass measurement, but extended all the way to the upper frequencies. And the red bars is measuring the reverb in the room. This is measuring much better with all the people in here. It normally is more reverberant. This is actually a very good measurement. So people need to stay here permanently in the exact positions you're at. Anything under 0.4 milliseconds, even lower, is good. Minimal reverb and echo. If y'all want to hear echo, we're redoing, in fact, the back of the house is a mess because we're redoing this bedroom here. There's nothing in it. We just put down wood floors. You walk in there, it echoes like crazy. Okay, so that was a concern I had. We got the wool carpet to minimize reverb and the furniture. So this measures quite good, quite well.
Three-dimensional graph of reverberation time versus frequency.
Yeah. So it's an interesting measurement. It'll be interesting with Bart, for instance, to see what effect his room treatments have because they're going to soften the reverb. That's the purpose of them, amongst other things. So this is a useful measurement to have. If you all clear the room and we do it again, it'll be much more reverberant.
As a generalization, when you had the carpeting here to not having the carpeting here, what did you notice in the difference?
Well, of course, we changed a few other things as well. I liked the improvement. I thought it was a brighter, more dynamic sound because it had a little bit more reverb and a little more dynamics, less absorption. Especially with electrostatic speakers that tend to roll off in the highs, I thought the highs sounded better. Okay, hard to tell. I didn't really measure. Too many variables changed between that point and what I had initially. So we can also, if you guys want, we can tweak the subs and play with it to see what happens and remeasure. We can leave the subs as they are, and I can turn up the bass here to see what effect that has on the woofer controls. That's more or less what we did before. I can also dial up the sub's volume itself, and there's a 25 hertz trim as well that I can play with. And you can tweak this to, you know, ad nauseum.
This is where you have to have the speakers though, correct? You
The
can't
subs?
move these, yes.
Well, I could. My wife is happy with them here. As you remember, the title of this presentation was Building a System with High Wife Acceptance Factor.
Well, what I'm saying
answer
is,
the question, what did he notice when we got rid of the carpet and he put down the wood? A much happier wife.
Yes, yes.
what I'm saying is the first change of anything to try to improve frequency response is moving things around.
Correct.
The second the change is electronically, right? Yeah.
Correct. And I will still tweak when I have time moving the subs around and seeing what effect that has. But I'm pretty good where I'm at.
That's your response right there?
Yes.
Of the full system?
Yes.
What's wrong with that?
That's the point. It's not that bad.
it's excellent.
Yeah, yeah. So I may be able to do better, okay, perhaps, but I'm happy with it, okay? All the permutations my system has gone through, this is the best it's been. Is it as dynamic as George's system? No. Is it as dynamic as Howard's? Probably not, or certainly not John's. Okay, but I've got the room and the wife to deal with, which is okay. Happy wife, happy life.
We're going to go from carpeting to wood flooring too.
Who? You are?
Us, yeah.
Okay, well you'll need to get a big rug for that big room, no doubt. And some soft furniture. I forget if you have leather or... The one thing I recommend for you, if you guys are having issues with this, ideally going with upholstered rather than leather seating is better for absorption if you want that. We had the couch before we did the wood and I was stuck with it. I mean, overall, with the big pillows in my fat body, it absorbs. Okay, anybody, what kind of tweaking would you like to play with here? We can do more measurements.
I still don't understand what these subs do. You can roll them off at different rates and frequencies? What will they do? What are they capable of?
A typical sub, they can do anything. I can manually control it and adjust phase, okay, 360 degrees of phase in 90-degree increments. It might be continuous, I don't know. I can change with the volume. I can adjust the high pass with the crossover where they roll off on the high end.
At any frequency you want?
Up to, I think, 90 or so.
Okay, good.
I've got all these controls, but I downloaded, what I see, there's this little USB thing, and I download the appropriate filter from Martin Logan onto this. It plugs in a USB drive at the back. It loads it to, I guess, the internal DSP, and I have it masked. So I downloaded the filter that is made to go with the summits when the woofers are tweaked down 10 decibels at 25 and 50 hertz. So I downloaded the specific filter for that.
In this room, so
correct.
That's the thing. So
correct.
That's why I don't see any way you get around some manual tweaking. I just don't.
No,
right.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I manually tweaked it further. I can turn off. In fact, let's do this. I can turn off the filters. Okay, very simple. Okay, it's got the custom low pass. Turn that off. I have the room EQ, which the other thing this comes with is it's a variation of Anthem room correction, because Paradigm, Anthem are sister companies of ML. They took the same technology, and there's a mic that I plug in here in the computer that measures the subs in the room and equalizes them for the room, which is important. Okay, that's the first thing I did. Okay, so I've got the subs optimized for the room, then I start playing with everything else. If I can turn that on and off as well. The response, as you would expect, is not a smooth type response. The initial raw measurement was pretty variable. But when I apply the curve, the DSP curve, after that internal measurement, it smooths it out. And I measured that. I'm not going to play with that too much now.
How did it sound with just the first room correction, the Anthem as you call it?
How did it sound without using like the custom filter? It sounded smoother. It was smoother sounding. The other thing, I'll show you something else interesting here. Everybody be quiet. This also has a built-in frequency generator, a sweep. So you can hear the actual response of the subs alone in the room and how the room interacts. Listen to this. This is interesting. can freeze it at any point if there's a rattling. But wait, there's more. Let me put the custom low pass back on and do it. So this, I'm going to change it one more time. Let's listen again. That's probably not as smooth.
That goes deeper though.
Goes lower.
Does it?
Yeah. Oh,
Is
yeah.
that your cabinets resonating over?
Probably everything.
It sounds like the doors on your
That's
cabinets.
going pretty low.
Yeah, that's going real deep, Alan.
Yeah.
The custom.
And now I'll do it without the room EQ. Okay, we'll hang that go. Okay, now we'll do it with just the native sub without the DSP EQ for the room. This is just the sub as is, both subs as is. Yeah, that's actually sounds better than it did before when I got them.
It's probably the people.
Could be.
Well, the mechanical break-in and subs too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is older, but that one's still breaking in. So it's interesting. Okay, and this has two 10-inch woofers and 500-watt Class D, amp, typical stuff. But by virtue of it being Martin Logan to match with that, that's the main reason I got it. These are way overpriced. But if you'll notice when I'm playing them, you can't feel them. The trick is they demo this just for demonstration purposes. They'll take a nickel and balance it on the top of the sub and crank it up, and it won't fall over. And this hardly moves.
Cancellation, right?
Yeah, they're balanced.
That's the point of the balance.
Right. The original version of the Martin Logan subs, the reserve line had 3 drivers in a tripolar array, like Paradigm also does on their high end. So it was balanced likewise. It's interesting. They went to the 2 drivers. I thought maybe they were cheapening and saving money for improving margins, but they said no, it's just they have better woofers. You don't need to go with 3 drivers anymore. Plus, you inevitably end up with 1 driver against the wall. So this way, you can basically have the 2 drivers not against the wall, and it gets a smoother response that way.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
And there's other companies doing that too.
Yeah. So it's got so many options of what you can do. So I typically have been running this, and I just started really the last 2 weeks tweaking this. I'm not by any means done.
You're doing pretty good from your response.
Yeah. So I'm happy with the progress we've made. I think we want to do the business presentation also before more folks have to leave. So let's take a little break. We'll do that, and we can continue afterwards. We'll continue playing with this. I'll do a demo of the analog setup. Hopefully more people brought some demo tracks.